Hey there, folks. I'm Meteorologist Matt Barrentine. All eyes are on the tropics. We're watching out for the development of a trop system. This will happen in probably middle next week, early next week, just depending on how things go here. You can see if you've been following along last couple of days, it keeps going up to 50%. So that going up because we're getting closer into the time window when it has a likelihood. Of course, that would be all the way through next Friday. Of course, it could go into next weekend. That's why it's only 50% and not higher. So we're looking at a real risk of development down in the southern Gulf and southern part of the Caribbean. And but all indications are we're going to system develop down that way. So let me run through a couple of models with you. Here we're going to start with the European model. And if develops this system into the south, the Bay of Campeche, as that's the area that we call it here. Now, where does it go from there, of course, would be the question mark. You see, have different areas going in different ways. And see these areas, look at them kind of going around in a circle. Guess what? That's what this is wanting to say, that it doesn't get picked up by anything. We have very weak steering currents, and that it just kind of bobbles around for a number of days out here in the Gulf of Mexico. That's definitely one possibility. It could just sit out, especially if it's in that southwestern corner of the Gulf. There won't be there to move it along. It's just going to stay stuck here if it does that through next Friday. All right, so let me give you the GFS or the American model, and we're going to see a bit of a different solution here. If more to the east, that would definitely be more problematic for us because more likely it could come up into our general region. Now, if the GFS or American model eventually take it into our area. But this whole model is also taken into to Tampa Bay area, some other spots as well. So we're not the only destination point of this model. And keep in mind, it is just one model, and they run this every 6 hours, and every 6 hours the solution is a bit different. So don't get too worried yet, but just remember that, hey, coming right towards us, it is a possibility. Definitely a possibility. That would be, if that happens, that would be next weekend. Not this weekend, obviously, but next weekend. So here's the thing. The thing about all this is that we have time. We have time. This weekend's going to be nice. It's going to be hot, but it's going to be nice. No worries about anything. So if you're out doing your thing, whatever your plans are this weekend, I'm just telling you to take a few minutes, and take an inventory. What do you have? Do you have everything? Do you have gas in the car? Do you have gas cans for the generator? What are you going to do to protect the windows? What are you going to do, in this scenario, that scenario? Go through your plans. Make sure you have your medicines and all that stuff. Get stuff taken care of early this weekend, Tuesday, and then when everybody else is flipping out on Thursday and Friday, you're good to go. So, and if you're watching this here on our Fox 10 web, you're the kind of person that's likely going to get out ahead of this thing. You're interested. You're keeping an eye on things. So I'm telling you now, get ready this weekend. And if it doesn't go away, hey, great. You got some extra canned food, right? So no worries, right? And you got stuff to barbecue, whatever. Just don't get yourself ready. Make some this weekend. Take an inventory. Think about what you need if it does come your way. Do you have a boat in the water? I would get that early rather than later. All right. So just take care of all these things. Again, if it doesn't come our way, hey, you're just being a Boy Scout. Here's my worry, right? Because if it does come our way, the water temperatures are in the mid to upper 80s across the Gulf. This thing and the upper level conditions will be very favorable for not just development, but for rapid growth, rapid intensification. Anything 84 degrees leads to rapid intensification if you have the right conditions in levels of the atmosphere. We'll have all that. So if it does come, it'll be a quickly strengthening storm. Of course, a lot will depend on exactly how fast it would be moving and all that. So there's still obviously a ton of marks. But I mean, hey, we live on the Gulf Coast. This is the hurricane season. We know that a devastating hurricane never out of the realm of possibilities. It's not the 100% possibility by any stretch here for us. This easily could miss us or never really come to fruition. Just plan for the worst and hope for the best. That's usually the best way to go, right? That's what we're looking at here with this possible storm. Now, just so you know, the name would likely be Helene. I don't think another one out in the Atlantic is going to form first. So if this becomes a storm, which I'm pretty sure at this point we're going to see a storm in the Gulf next week, it'll be Helene. That will be the name of this upcoming system. So here are the key takeaways. I'm anticipating formation early to mid next week, very likely. The models have a ton of uncertainties. I just showed you our two major models. Wins it in the Gulf for several days. The other brings it up our way or brings it over to Tampa. It's had multiple solutions. There is another called the Canadian model, which isn't as good with hurricanes. I don't tend to look at it a whole lot, but here I wanted to check it out. The Canadian model has been very, very high on it going into Louisiana. So, I mean, there's really a wide spread of different possibilities here. So, a lot of uncertainties. The things we do know for certain is that it's very likely to happen, that we're going to have, a system in the Gulf next week, and that we need to be prepared. That's number 3 key takeaway. Be prepared, have your hurricane plan in place, know what you're going to do. So the last thing on there, be cautious of social media posts, is like I just said, everyone just talked about, they run them 4 times a day. So people thinking that, hey, it's making landfall in Mobile Bay, and then put on social media. Remember, that is just one possibility. It is not gospel. Meteorologists, we call them guidance because they can provide us some guidance, but they cannot provide with certainties, especially this far out. I mean, we get 3 days out, things get better. But we're talking the following weekend, so we're talking 8 and 9 out. Anything beyond about 5 days with tropical gets really dicey, especially after 7 days. After 7 days, it gets really bad. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen here yet, but we figure, and that is that we are going to be dealing with a tropical system in the Gulf here sometime next week. Now, oops, why did it go back? Skipped way forward there. Looking at what's happening down there right now, you can see there are signs of some storms. What we're actually starting to see is what we call the Central American Gyre. And what that is a very large, broad area of low pressure. And they're very common. They typically happen in the spring, say in May and early June. And then they tend to happen again right around fall, of course, Sunday, day of fall. So this is very common, and what it is it's just a broad area of disturbed weather that happens over Central America. And when they set up, as meteorologists, tropical meteorologists, we're always looking for these things, because when they do set up, very often they create tropical systems. And a lot of times on the other side, over there in the Pacific part, because it covers, like you see the arrows there, it goes all through Central America, parts of Mexico. So it can spawn storms on either side, and at times on both sides. There's been times when the gyre will have one storm on the Atlantic side and one storm on the Pacific side. It's the Caribbean and the Gulf, but we call it the Atlantic side. That's what's happening. Already started, and this was the first, we talked about this days ago, that we were seeing this gyre set up. This was our first hint that some issues were going to start popping up here. And I think I first talked about it, I want to say Monday or Tuesday on air. It's been a few days. So this has been a long-running thing. We're way out. That's the key thing, folks. Remember, we are way out ahead of this. Once again, so we have time to watch this and to prepare. Let me get this one up here. This one's got a little bit different information. So that development, like I said, is expected over the next few days. Not expected over the days, I'm sorry, in next week. Might have to change the wording on that because it's really past the weekend at this point. And once again, obviously, we're uncertain about exactly where it ends up going. But everybody, from northern Mexico down through the southwest tip of Florida, everybody needs to be keeping an eye on this, because once again, we don't have any good forecast on exactly where it'll end up, because everything is, the steering currents out there are extremely weak. And there's just not much to steer it. And let me stop this real quick, because this is interesting here. Where I talked about sometimes it pops them up on either side. And here, European model on 11 a.m. Tuesday, and it's showing, if you look down there near Salvador on the Pacific side, it shows a quick spin up possible tropical system down that way. Looks like it goes basically into way. It doesn't last very long, and then it shows the other one spinning up our side down the southwestern Gulf. And that's going to happen with these gyres. They can up on either side. And that's the model. Remember I said the European model, what it's been doing is it leaves it hung up down there in the southwestern Gulf and kind of just spins around. The American model keeps wanting to bring it up somewhere between Biloxi and Tampa Bay. That's been the solutions over the last several days, is Biloxi to Tampa Bay. That's what this model has been saying. The GFS or the American model. People ask me all the time, which one's the better model? Honestly, it's some storms it does better, some storms the European does better, and the problem is right now is that it hasn't formed yet. So I would say neither storm is going to have a good grip on exactly where it's going to go yet. If you don't know exactly where something is starting, it's really hard to tell where something is going to end up. And we don't have a good idea of where it's starting. And both the GFS and the European model are starting this in two different. The GFS is starting it somewhere near the tip of Cuba. The European model is starting it over in the southwestern Gulf, the Bay of Campeche, far apart. That's a pretty big difference. Once it actually does form where it does, then the American model, the European model will have an idea, and we'll get a lot better information. But that's going to take some time. Like I said, we have time, and that's the good thing about this. This weekend's going to be good. It's going to be a nice weekend. Plenty of time to get out there, make that inventory, know what you're going to do, and get ready for this possible storm. I'm coming up to 2:50. I got a 3 o'clock show to do, so I got to stop. But once again, thank you for joining us here on Fox 10. We'll keep you up to date and happening with the system as we get into next week.